Welcome back. If you haven't been here before, why? So today we are talking about the first 3 tools that I think you should get as somebody who's doing projects by yourself. DIY guy, if you will, or gal, whatever you are. I don't care. First, let's talk about a drill. Now, before we get into anything specific with the drill, let's make sure we know the difference between a drill and an impact driver. So a drill has a chuck that loosens and tightens as you hold this and go forward or backward. An impact doesn't have a chuck that loosens or tightens. It has more of a quick clamp or a quick connect type connection. Basically, most impacts, you pull this forward and slide that in there and it holds. Now, we can't hold drill bits in this unless they have this little flange on the end, which typically you're not going to find. The reason I say that you should get a drill over an impact for your first tool is because the drill can hold this and it can hold a normal drill bit. So, to give you a visual for all you visual cats out there, this can be used as a drill or as an impact. Now obviously this is going to have less torque or less power to screw something down that's really got some mass behind it, some junk in the trunk. This is more powerful for actually setting fasteners, but this is going to be able to handle pretty much everything you have to do around the house. So, now that you know the difference, and you know why I would choose a drill over an impact, let's move on to the next one. This is probably my most versatile tool. This is an oscillating multi-tool. I call it an oscillator. Some people call it a jiggler. Some people call it a multi-tool. Whatever you want to call it, I don't really care. So this is a side-to-side motion rather than a reciprocating saw that's this way, which let's also talk about that for a second too. This is a reciprocating saw, okay? A lot of people call this a sawzall. That's kind of like calling a circular saw a skill saw. You're referring to a tool by the brand that made it popular, kind of sort of thing. So this is actually called a reciprocating saw. If you call it a sawzall, most people are going to know what you're talking about, obviously, but the technical term. Reciprocating, oscillating. This one goes front to back, this one goes side to side. Okay, we got that clear? Alright, so now there's a plethora of different attachments that you can use for this end here. That's why it's called a multi-tool. This one you just pull down and slide it in there. So I build a lot of decks. What I use this thing for is I typically will put all my decking on, and if I'm doing a wooden handrail or I have post sleeves and I have to put a 4x4 post in, after all my decking is on, I mark out where my posts are going to go, and then I take this little guy, and from on top of the deck, I can cut directly down into the face of the deck, the exact width I need, and you can keep pretty good control of it, but it does jump on you a little bit. One of the tricks is to try to go at an angle a bit. Don't go straight down. And with any blade, you're going to want to work it side to side. If you just go down in one spot, you're going to heat up the wood, which is going to kind of get some of that sawdust jarred up and jellied up on your blade, which is going to heat the blade up, and then that's going to warp your blade and make it not work. So anytime you are using a reciprocating saw or an oscillator, you want to make sure you have a little bit of movement on it so you're not heating up just one part of the blade so you don't ruin it faster. Sorry, tangents. I go on those sometimes. So like I said, I use this for decks, and I can cut from the top down and get a pretty accurate cut. I can put my post right on top of that, and if it doesn't fit perfect, I can leave the post right there, put this on the edge of the post, and make a flush cut right on the side of it. So this thing is incredibly handy. Say you're putting new flooring in, LVP, that is a project that a ton of DIYers do. It's pretty easy. I think most people should try and do that themselves. But say you're coming up to the trim on your door, you don't want to cut the floor around the trim. It's much easier to take a scrap piece of floor, set it down, put this on top of it, and you can flush cut the trim so that way the flooring slides directly underneath the trim, and rather than you trying to cut around it, and it just doesn't work out. It's always better to go underneath it. So this little guy right here, a blessing. Last but certainly not least, the old skill saw, circular saw that we were talking about. This is obviously Old Faithful for most people. This is my most used tool, from anything to cutting deck boards to spindles, 2x4s for framing, sheeting, pretty well anything. You can use this to make cuts almost as straight as a table saw. It's going to be a little bit harder than using a table saw, but you know, if you're just starting out and getting into some projects, you don't need to make those big investments yet. If you just have a little circular saw here, you can clamp down a straight edge and ride this guard right down that straight edge. And as long as you have everything clamped down tight and you make sure you're riding up against that, you can have a cut that's pretty close to straight. I mean, we're talking, if you do it right, it's pretty well there. They make track attachments for this that you can screw on. And before you buy a table saw, just give it a shot. Try this out, because I'm telling you, on site, you can't always just carry a table saw around and move it to every single area. Sometimes you just gotta make what you have work. Another note on this little guy here. So as you'll notice, these saws are a little bit different. This blade is on the left side, this blade's on the right side of the handle, okay? I don't remember which one's labeled as which, but I remember knowing that it's kind of backwards. To me, why it doesn't matter is because I can use either saw in either hand and make a straight cut. I think it's important that you don't dictate which saw you get strictly off which side the blade is on, but more which one is going to be ideal for your circumstances. So like this one's a little bit smaller. The motor can't handle quite as much. This one's bigger. That's why I use this one more. This is an extra one that just sits around. I prefer the 7 1/4 blade over the 6 1/2. So that to me is a bigger deal than having the blade on either side. That's why I prefer this one. I think if you're doing small projects and it's your very first saw, it's okay to put that into consideration. I'm not going to look down on you for buying a blade or a saw that is on a saw that has the blade on the side you're more comfortable with. But if you are going to be using the saw a lot and putting it, you want as deep cut as possible, you're going to be cutting 4x4s and all that sort of thing, or pressure treated material. This does better with pressure treated material. The blade is bigger, it can handle more. If you're going to be using it for heavier duty stuff, don't let the side of the blade steer you. Worry about which one's going to be able to handle more. Yeah, I don't know. I'm sorry. I get going sometimes and I get lost. I don't even remember exactly where I was at. But either way, I think that's it. Thank you guys for stopping by. I hope this helps a little bit. Yeah, I know most of these tools are yellow. That does not mean I have any loyalty towards them. I actually kind of have a gripe with them that I might go over in another video. But until then, I will see you next time. Bye.